All right, all right, all right, all right. You can't make this shit up. Dan, David, this is the Jay and Washington Network. We are coming to you from Central Florida. It is Content Creation Thursday, and you may not be watching this on Thursday, but Thursdays are the days that we do our content for you, the content that you crave. Let's get into this. So, New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham has issued an emergency order suspending the right to carry firearms in public in Albuquerque and the surrounding county for at least 30 days due to a recent increase in gun violence. An 11-year-old boy was shot outside a baseball stadium. The move has faced opposition from law enforcement, expressing concerns about constitutional rights, safety, constitutional rights. Here we go. The governor cited recent shootings as the motivation behind the order. Advocates argue it's a necessary step to curb gun violence. The public safety versus constitutional rights debate rages on. Let's go, Dan. What say you?
Well, first and foremost, while I do acknowledge that what happened in New Mexico is horrible, I mean, shootings are always a horrible occurrence. And especially when it's a child who is the victim of the crime. I mean, that's a terrible thing to happen just in general. So I understand the concern from the community about gun violence. And obviously, it's something that is just absolutely tragic when it occurs.
Right.
So, what I do question, however, is I wonder if maybe criminals aren't going to give up their right to guns because they're non-law abiding citizens. So I question whether or not now it's just going to be, you know, citizens are at the mercy of criminals and law enforcement,
Sure. I see
because
that.
those are the only two people that are now going to be carrying guns. Where in other situations, maybe law-abiding citizen with a gun could be a deterrent for a criminal to commit another crime. So, what do you think about that?
I see what you're saying. For our long-term viewers and listeners, you may know my position. Considering how gun violence has just gotten way out of hand here in America, and growing up in the 70s and 80s on the south side of Chicago, we had significant gang wars over the crack cocaine drug wars, and so we saw a lot of violence and a lot of death. Um, Everyone, America is the most heavily armed country that I'm aware of in the world, and I've just gotten to a point where you know everyone, baby to a 95-year-old, everyone have a gun. Everyone have a gun. We're right back at to the wild wild west. And so I see this as a slippery slope for those constitutional rights advocates, the Second Amendment advocates. I see how they could be concerned that this is a slippery slope of government eventually taking away their rights, their freedoms, their guns.
Right, and I do think that there's definitely reason for concern, and I know that everyone's um, point of view back to the criminal idea is that um, everyone. I feel like a lot of people feel that criminals will be the last people to turn in their guns. So then I feel like it's difficult for law-abiding citizens to then say, "Oh yeah, in good faith, here are my guns." But like, what are you going to do
Keep me safe.
to keep me safe, right?
Right.
And so I question again whether or not like this is a good use of New Mexico's resources, or if they should be. I know that there was some things in the article about extending background checks and their red flag legislation that the governor had signed off on.
Right.
Um, However, if people can go behind the government's back and get guns illegally, then all you're doing is preventing. You're putting a temporary solution in place that ultimately is just going to put potentially more people in danger. And I know that they said if it saves one life, then it's worth it. I question if it's gonna more so be a trade-off for a life where, somebody who would normally be carrying a gun and be able to defend themselves, will no longer have that right for the next 30 days. And I think there's a good chance that crime might even spike. I mean, if you're a criminal right now and you're thinking, oh, that gas station that is down the block, no law-abiding citizen is going to be in there carrying a gun, so I can just walk in, and as long as there's not a cop, then I'm good to go.
Right. The issue of safety is mitigated, opportunity is mitigated to create a crime with the firearm. Speak to some of the specifics about the AP article. There was it is a 30-day suspension and the right to carry firearms in public in Albuquerque. So in Albuquerque, the suspension was classified as an emergency public health order. So, the conspiracy theorists are probably thinking, okay, using public health as a means to suspend um, gun rights is another slippery slope, another harbinger, if I'm using the word correct, for more restrictions that the government may place on citizens. And then also, like you were saying, this legislation includes a red flag law and extended background check requirements, and it gave state regulators the right to inspect firearms dealers and compile data on gunshot victims, which is there's no national database for that, but there are individual nonprofits and organizations, think tanks that do keep that kind of data. I kind of like that. I do. I think we need to have an accounting of um, the number of victims of gun violence.
Right. I think that might be a start to kind of unveil some of the areas where it's more of a problem. So I don't know if maybe analyzing that data is going to lead us to, oh, well, now we have a circle where we're pretty sure, there's arms dealers. And depending on how the government goes about handling that, I think that would put the citizens of Albuquerque in uh, at ease a little bit. But ultimately, if over the course of the 30 days, if nothing is acted upon by the government, I don't think that you're going to be able to get away with extending or doing
I
anything like
agree.
this again. And especially coming off of a global pandemic where everything was put forth by the health, I think there's obviously going to be some backfire with that kind of a statement because nobody has a lot of faith in that right now. So
Right.
I think for the citizens of Albuquerque, I'm sure they're furious, and I'm sure that they have some reason to speculate and be concerned with what's going on in their government.
In the law, the suspension does not affect law enforcement or people who need firearms for their jobs, like security or things like licensed security or whatever. This action will have repercussions. I believe it will have national repercussions. It's again is something that is of concern. I do want to go back before the shootings, before the legislation. I do want to go back to before open carry was legal, and I may be stretching this here, but I want to cite a Brennan Institute report a couple of years ago that stated that there is typically a uptick in gun-related violence, about 23-24% after open carry laws are passed. So are we in this particular instance, and I don't know what the numbers are or the data is in New Mexico. Um, However, here in Florida, we just recently passed legislation that allows open carry uh, Am I right on that, John? Open carry here in Florida, the recent legislation? No. Permitless carry. Thank you. Here in Florida, without licensing, training, things like that. And so I'm just thinking, are we? Is the governor trying to deal with a situation that was, I guess, you know, in a way predicted, the uptick in violence because of laws that were passed allowing more access to guns, or is it something that is an overreaching government? And I'm still trying to figure that out.
Do you know how long ago that was passed where it became legal in at least New Mexico?
I don't, and I think that's something that I'll follow up on because it's still in the news. I know that law enforcement has pushed back on some of the sheriffs in Albuquerque and in the state have pushed back on the governor making this decision. And a headline I saw just the other day said, in essence, the governor saying, "Who cares?" Not who cares, but she's acting in the best interest of the community. I understand what you're saying, but hey, I'm doing this in the best interest in the public safety of the community.
Okay. Do you feel that there's like a real case against her for acting unconstitutionally?
If this is outside the boundaries of New Mexican state law, yes. And again, I have to do my research. I would think that the Attorney General or the Supreme Court will definitely have their say in trying to defend this. I'm sure that there'll be lawsuits related to this, but this is something to look at a little bit closely.
Yeah, I know that she had said, or it said in the article, that they were concerned. The police, or maybe is it Alan? What's his name?
That would be I see Governor Lujan Grisham. Her name has popped up a lot in the article.
John Allen.
John Allen, yes.
Yeah, so John Allen had said that. Man, I just lost my train of thought. Hold on. He had said, that this is going to lead to a lot of difficulty for the deputies and law enforcement, and that it's going to be a lot of suits, and that he doesn't want to put them in that position because it's ultimately going to lead to a lot of paperwork and a lot of tough decisions for law enforcement, especially if you're assuming that people are unarmed. I think it's going to be very difficult for law enforcement who already maybe have a lack of training, or whatever, people have shaky faith in law enforcement as is, and it's tough to make a decision when you're pressed up against it, and this is just going to add to tension and make it more difficult for them to make reasonable decisions on the streets. So,
and John Allen is one of the sheriffs. I think it is Bernalillo, Bernalillo County Sheriff. And as you were saying, he had some reservations, but also there's going to be some repercussions to the governor's actions. And this is something that I'm sure, again, will stay in the news for a while and be very interesting how it shakes out.
yeah, I'll definitely be keeping a close eye on this one, because if it's happening in New Mexico and there's no repercussions, then it can happen anywhere.
That's right. That's
So-
right. That's true. I really would like to know what the courts are going to say about this. Don't know much about New Mexico politics or the makeup of the courts or the state legislature. It seems like the state legislature leans more Democratic, seeing that the governor was able to get this legislation or this restriction pass. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. I guess my final word is that obviously we feel that shootings are horrible, but the method to clean up, I don't know if it's going to be effective here, and I think there's going to be a lot of repercussions following the governor's actions here, and I don't necessarily see the people as New Mexico being very receptive to this legislation or this 30-day ban.
I believe we're in a fascinating period here in regards to public safety versus the constitutional right to bear arms. I see the argument on both sides. There is a gun violence epidemic. We see it across America. And are we addressing the issue sufficiently? Personally, I don't think so. I think we need to go a little bit further. Like when America was addressing the hazards of smoking, and we would see signs and posters of how damage someone's lungs can be. I think it's time to show victims of mass shootings, victims of gun violence, and show the effects of what happens when you have someone, just go into a store, a school, or whatever, and just start shooting up the place. Maybe we need to see the effects of these weapons and the people behind them.
That's a very interesting perspective, because obviously the ability to advertise for cigarettes was one of the things that America did to prevent the next generation from.
Yes.
But if you drive down the Florida freeway, you see gun billboards, and it's something that's continued to be allowed to be advertised. And I question, at this point, what's killing more, guns or cigarettes? So
Right.
I think that, just as in cigarettes, people who are, big gun fanatics will continue to buy guns,
Sure.
even if they're not
Sure.
being advertised for.
Sure.
And if it's something where people feel that they need to have it, they'll go out and buy a gun. But I don't think it needs to be something. If it's going to be something that people see, I think it should be the negative side of what guns are capable of, rather than like
Glorification.
the glorification of it. Absolutely. So
Sure.
I think that that's an interesting step and an approach that I don't feel like people have talked about much. Is that if you were to ban the advertisement of guns, or at least if you're going to show an advertisement about guns, make sure it's showing what they're capable of. Which there was an advertisement a couple of years ago. It was like a back to school commercial.
Okay.
And they had the first half of the commercial was very like Target-esque, I guess I would say, where everybody's got the designer backpack on and
Yes.
the folders, but it was a gun violence commercial saying, like, that you're not safe at school. They were halfway through the commercial, it turned into a shooting. It was very powerful,
Right.
and people were hiding. And really,
Wow. Wow.
so yeah, I think more commercials like that have powerful messages behind, what these weapons are capable of. I think that would be a productive way to, I mean, rather than taking the guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens,
Right.
I think making sure that the public knows what they're capable of, and maybe restricting some of the ways that guns are viewed in terms of advertising sense. That's something that the government also has control over, which I feel like they haven't really put to full action before going with this extreme removal of guns. So
There were restrictions for the advertisement of alcohol. Those restrictions have been laxed now. However, at one point, you couldn't see a commercial on TV for a cognac or brandy or bourbon, but those restrictions have been pulled back. I like the idea of the shock value, of advertising, and of course, advertising marketing wants to go for that reptilian part of the brain where we touch on the you know emotions of of the individual looking at the commercial or viewing the marketing piece. So yeah, I agree with that. Let's show everything. Let's show everything. We're we're a civilized society. Before the conspiracy theories get out there, let's be more proactive. Uh, let's keep the lizard people at bay.
Agreed. Yeah, I think you always want to be proactive. I think by the time that, you know, something obviously like this happens, it's too late to be um, completely productive in a situation like this. So
Excellent.
I think it's more damage control than anything. And
Agreed.
I think that there's a lot more that could be done to prevent, things like this from happening again in the future. And I don't know if it's an advertising problem or a look at this country's mental health situation. I don't know where it stems, but it should be addressed from all angles, and that's my final word.
Excellent. All right. And I think I had my final word. It's all in the marketing. We need a different approach. You want to take us out of here?
Yeah, sure. Make sure you like, comment, hit the follow button. This is You Can't Make This Shit Up, and this is a J and Washington production. So thanks for watching.
Thank you.